Welcome back to the deep dive. We've both been digging into this really absorbing personal blog. It's quite a collection, memories, stories. You can even filter by year or age.
Yeah, it's easy to get lost in there. Today, though, we're zooming in on one particular story, the fourth one we came across in the collection.
Right. It's called Working Days from the Age of 8. And that title, well, it definitely sets a tone.
It really does. It caught my eye immediately.
Same here. So in this deep dive, we're planning to unpack that. What it's like starting work so young, how the narrator's views changed, some of the difficult things they saw.
And the role of family, too. Especially around some pretty big decisions made during childhood. It's a really powerful glimpse into how early life can shape you.
Exactly. And it highlights how important support is when you're young and facing, well, grown-up situations. Okay, so let's jump into Working Days from the Age of 8.
Sounds good. One of the first things that stood out was that reflection on the old belief, that starting work really early automatically means you'll be successful.
Ah, yes. The narrator brings that up, how that was a common idea back then. Get kids working, set them up for life, sort of thing.
But then, almost immediately, they offer this really sharp insight. Something like, today I realize this reasoning confuses correlation with causation.
That's it. It's quite a sophisticated point, isn't it? Recognizing that just because things happen in sequence doesn't mean one caused the other. It shows real growth in perspective.
Definitely. It really makes you think about how experience, maybe just getting older, changes how you understand cause and effect. Things look less simple later on.
So the narrative then moves to the first actual job, selling bus tickets.
Yeah.
What kind of picture did that paint for you?
Oh, incredibly small, like claustrophobic, 70 by 70 centimeters, with just a dim yellow light bulb for an 8-year-old. Wow.
And it wasn't just physically dark. There was the fear, right? The narrator mentions being really scared of getting robbed.
Especially in Monterey Square, where they mentioned addicts sleeping nearby. It's a really stark exposure to adult issues.
And that misconception about addicts, too, assuming they were all thieves, it shows how kids pick up on, societal biases or fears without really understanding.
Exactly. You feel that vulnerability of the kid alone in the dark with all this anxiety, but then there's that little bit of comfort at the end of the day.
Right, the counting money with family. That ritual.
Yes, the sound of the coins counting with his father and brother. It becomes this anchor, like a moment of safety and connection after the fear.
A real contrast. It makes you think that family connection was probably crucial. Then the second job, the kiosk near Dineshu Park, that sounds like a change of pace.
A big change. Much busier, lots of people near the park and the city theater, so initially it felt safer, maybe even a bit enjoyable because of the crowds.
But that safety was maybe a bit illusory, because this is where the narrator encounters some more difficult things.
Yeah, the troubling realities, as they put it. Things like corrupt soldiers and bus drivers taking bribes or favors.
And the sexual harassment scenes mentioned. Witnessing that must have been incredibly disturbing for a child.
Deeply disturbing. Imagine the confusion, the distress. What sense do you even make of that at 8 or 9? Especially, as the narrator notes, given their strong religious background at the time.
That's another layer, isn't it? Very limited exposure, state TV, one religious song, and then suddenly confronted with these really harsh, contradictory aspects of human behavior.
It really highlights that potential clash between a sheltered upbringing and the messier parts of the real world. How do you reconcile those?
Then, at age 9, the decision to go work for Uncle Esmail in Kellerdasht. Why do you think they made that switch?
Well, the narrator says they were fed up, which, sounds about right for a kid wanting something different. Maybe escaping the city realities, moving towards family.
And this restaurant job, Esmail Ashpaz, it had its own dynamic, working with his brother Hani.
Right. And that bowl they shared, saving up for an aluminum bicycle during the busy New Year holiday, there's a real touch of childhood hope and ambition there.
It feels relatable, that shared goal. But then there's Uncle Esmail's philosophy on wages. If you want to ruin a worker, pay him too much. That's something.
It is something. A very, pragmatic view, maybe even a bit cynical. Keep him dependent, perhaps. It reflects a certain kind of business mindset, I suppose.
Yet the narrator remembers him so fondly. Kind, loving, a role model even. That's quite the juxtaposition.
It really is. It shows how complex people are, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Someone can hold those views about work but still be genuinely caring personally. Makes you wonder which side had the deeper impact.
Which brings us to that pivotal summer. The huge choice. Keep wrestling or go back to work.
Yeah, that feels like a major fork in the road. 2 years of intense wrestling training, ready for competition. Clearly, that's where the passion was.
It wasn't just a hobby.
Yeah.
And then that memory, walking with his mother, and she just says, it's your decision.
That's powerful. It shows incredible respect for his feelings, his agency, even knowing their difficult circumstances. That kind of validation from a parent, wow.
But the reality, the pressure of poverty wins out. In the end, work over wrestling. That's a heavy burden for a kid.
It really is. And the way the narrator addresses the uncle directly in the writing, saying they're still not sure if it was the right choice, it shows how much that decision still resonates. The what ifs.
The story kind of wraps up by hinting at what's next in the blog, working life up to 17, dealing with businessmen, a shift towards secularism, even street protests later on.
Yeah, it definitely sets the stage. You can see how these early experiences we just talked about might feed into that later trajectory. It makes you want to keep reading.
Absolutely. So reflecting on this story, Working Days from the Age of 8, it really hammers home how much our early life circumstances can steer our development, doesn't it?
Without a doubt. Starting work that young, it just immerses you in the adult world. The good, the bad, the confusing. And that shapes how you see everything.
And you really sense the vulnerability. Kids facing complex situations without maybe the emotional tools to process it all. That potential for fear, confusion, like with the addicts or the harassment.
Which is why guidance and support are just so vital. Having those anchors, the father, the mother, even the uncle in his complicated way, seems like it made a huge difference for the narrator.
Yeah. And it's fascinating to see the perspectives evolve within the story itself. Like the initial view of addicts changing or understanding correlation versus causation later on. It shows that growth happens, learning happens.
Right. Those early experiences are powerful, but how we understand them can change over time with more knowledge and reflection. They aren't set in stone.
Well, this dive into just the fourth story has been really thought-provoking, seeing the weight of early work, those tough choices, how circumstances really mold a childhood.
It really has. It gives you a strong sense of this individual's journey beginning, and you definitely become invested in seeing where it leads in the rest of the blog.
Definitely looking forward to exploring more. So for everyone listening, we hope you found this exploration insightful, and definitely stay tuned for our next deep dive.